Harlem, New York City, September 1931. A white police sergeant steps off the curb at the corner of Lenox Avenue and 135th Street, locks eyes with a 24-year-old numbers runner named Ellsworth Raymond Johnson, known on every block as Bumpy, and spits in his face. The act is deliberate, public, witnessed by dozens. Within 72 hours, the 32nd Precinct station house goes silent. No officers report for the midnight shift. The desk sergeant is found unconscious in an alley 3 blocks away. 2 patrol cars are discovered stripped and torched near the Harlem River. And the sergeant who spat, he vanishes. His badge is mailed back to the precinct in a brown envelope with no return address. This is not a riot. It is not spontaneous. It is a calculated demonstration of power in a neighborhood where the line between law and underworld has become impossible to distinguish. At stake, control of Harlem's illicit lottery racket, a cash empire generating an estimated $15,000 per day, nearly $6 million annually in Depression-era money. The precinct had been squeezing the operators, demanding higher and higher tribute. Bumpy Johnson, muscle for Stephanie St. Clair, the self-proclaimed queen of the numbers, had refused. The spit was meant to humiliate, to remind him who owned the streets. Instead, it ignited 72 hours that would redefine the balance of power in Upper Manhattan for the next decade. This is a reconstructed account based on public reporting, historical records, and widely circulated accounts from the Harlem underworld of the early 1930s. Some details vary across sources. What follows is the most consistent narrative drawn from police reports, newspaper archives, and oral histories collected decades later. The confrontation happens at 11:30 on a Thursday morning. The weather is warm. The sidewalks are crowded. Bumpy Johnson is walking south on Lenox Avenue, returning from a meeting at a speakeasy basement. Near 139th Street, he is dressed sharply gray suit, polished shoes, fedora tilted just so. He is not yet the legend he will become, but he is known, feared by some, respected by others. He moves through Harlem with the confidence of a man who understands the rules of the street, even if those rules exist outside the law. Sergeant Daniel Corcoran is waiting outside a corner grocery. He is 42 years old, a 17-year veteran of the NYPD, and by multiple accounts, one of the most corrupt officers in the precinct. He collects protection money from speakeasies, brothels, and numbers runners. He has beaten men in custody. He has planted evidence. He is not subtle about his contempt for the black residents of Harlem, and he does not hide his belief that the neighborhood exists for his personal enrichment. According to witnesses interviewed later by community organizers and journalists, Corcoran steps directly into Bumpy's path. He says something accounts differ on the exact words, but the tone is clear, insulting, racist, dismissive. Bumpy does not respond. He tries to step around. Corcoran blocks him again. Then, with deliberate slowness, the sergeant leans forward and spits. The saliva strikes Bumpy square in the face. For a moment, the street freezes. Conversations stop. Vendors pause mid-transaction. Everyone understands what this means. It is not merely disrespect. It is a challenge, a public declaration that Bumpy Johnson, and by extension, the entire numbers operation he represents, is powerless, that the police can do anything to anyone at any time without consequence. Bumpy does not flinch. He does not wipe his face. He does not speak. He simply stares at Corcoran for 5 long seconds. Then he turns and walks away. The crowd parts. No one says a word. Corcoran laughs. He makes a comment to his partner, another officer whose name does not survive in the records. They walk back toward the precinct house. Within the hour, word reaches Stephanie St. Clair. She is in her mid-30s, a French-speaking immigrant from Martinique who built the numbers racket in Harlem into a sophisticated operation with runners, collectors, bankers, and enforcers spread across dozens of blocks. She is known as Madam Queen or simply Queenie. She does not tolerate disrespect. She does not forgive insults, and she has been waiting for an excuse to push back against the precinct's escalating demands. By early afternoon, Bumpy is summoned to her apartment on Edgecombe Avenue. The meeting lasts less than 30 minutes. No written record exists of what is said. But by nightfall, the word on the street is clear. Something is coming. The numbers runners are told to stay off Lenox Avenue after dark. The speakeasies close their back rooms early. The precinct's informants report an unusual silence. No one is talking, no one is cooperating, and the usual flow of tips and bribes has stopped. The 72-hour clock has begun. Thursday, 6:15 p.m., Sergeant Corcoran finishes his shift and leaves the precinct through the front entrance. He is alone. His partner called in sick an hour earlier, an unusual move that investigators will later find suspicious. Corcoran walks east toward 3rd Avenue. Witnesses place him at a bar on 125th Street around 7 o'clock. He is drinking bourbon. He is loud, boasting about the morning's confrontation. He uses racist language repeatedly. The bartender, a black man named Samuel Hayes, serves him in silence. Corcoran leaves the bar at 8:30. He is never seen alive again. Thursday, 11 p.m., 2 patrol officers from the 32nd Precinct respond to a disturbance call near the Harlem River docks. The address is vague. The call came from a payphone, voice muffled, possibly disguised. When the officers arrive, they find nothing. No disturbance, no witnesses. They return to their vehicle. Both tires on the driver's side are slashed. The radio is smashed. They walk back to the precinct on foot, arriving after midnight. They file a report. The desk sergeant notes the incident but does not escalate. Friday, 2:30 a.m., a black Model T sedan pulls up outside the precinct house. No one exits. The engine idles for 5 minutes. Then the car drives away. A patrolman on the front steps reports the incident to his supervisor, but no action is taken. Later, witnesses will say the car circled the block 3 times that night. The license plate, if noted, does not appear in any surviving records. Friday, 9 a.m., Sergeant Corcoran's wife calls the precinct. He did not come home. His bed was not slept in. She is worried. The captain assigns 2 detectives to locate him. They retrace his steps from the previous evening. The bartender, Samuel Hayes, confirms Corcoran was there but claims he left alone and sober, a lie, by all other accounts. The detectives canvass the neighborhood. No one has seen anything. No one has heard anything. The silence is absolute. Friday, 3:45 p.m. A brown envelope arrives at the precinct's front desk. Inside is Sergeant Corcoran's badge, shield number 1173, and a single sheet of paper with a typewritten message, "He forgot his manners." No signature, no fingerprints. The envelope's postmark is local, stamped Thursday night. The captain orders an immediate mobilization. Every available officer is pulled into the station. Plainclothes detectives are dispatched into Harlem. Informants are pressed for information. Nothing comes back. The underworld has gone dark. Friday, 8 p.m. A second patrol car is reported stolen from a side street near the precinct. The officers had parked it to grab dinner at a diner on 8th Avenue. When they return, the vehicle is gone. It is found 6 hours later, torched and stripped, near the Harlem River rail yards. The fire department responds. The wreckage is still smoldering. No witnesses, no suspects. The message is clear. The precinct's authority does not extend beyond its front door. Saturday, 12:15 a.m. The midnight shift begins. 7 officers are Scheduled. Only 3 report for duty. The others call in sick, cite family emergencies, or simply do not show. The captain threatens disciplinary action, but the fear is palpable. Officers on patrol stick to pairs, avoid side streets, and refuse to leave their vehicles. Arrests drop to 0. Foot patrols are suspended. The precinct, for all practical purposes, has ceded control of Harlem. Saturday, 7:30 a.m., a dock worker finds a man unconscious in an alley off West 130th Street. He is identified as the desk sergeant from the 32nd Precinct. His uniform is torn. His face is bruised. His wallet and service weapon are missing. He is taken to Harlem Hospital. When he regains consciousness 2 hours later, he claims he cannot remember what happened. He says he was jumped from behind. He cannot describe his attackers. He cannot say how many there were. Doctors note his injuries are consistent with a severe beating. Police investigators find no evidence at the scene. No blood, no shell casings, no weapon. The sergeant is released from the hospital the following day and quietly transfers out of the precinct within a week. Saturday, 2 p.m. Stephanie St. Clair is seen on the steps of the Abyssinian Baptist Church, speaking with community leaders. She is calm. She is smiling. She makes no public statements about the precinct's troubles, but her presence is noted. The message is implicit. She is untouchable. The numbers operation continues without interruption. Runners make their rounds openly. Collections are made in broad daylight. Not a single officer intervenes. Saturday, 11:59 p.m., 72 hours after the spit. The precinct house is nearly empty. Only a skeleton crew remains. The captain has requested reinforcements from downtown, but they will not arrive until Monday. Sergeant Corcoran's body has not been found. The typewritten message sits in an evidence locker, analyzed and reanalyzed, yielding nothing. The desk sergeant's amnesia is unconvincing but unchallenged, and, on the streets of Harlem, business is better than ever. The numbers runners are moving more slips than any week in recent memory. Fear has shifted sides. To understand what happened in those 72 hours, you have to understand 2 parallel worlds that collided on a Harlem street corner in 1931. On one side, the New York Police Department, a force steeped in patronage, corruption, and the unquestioned authority of white officers over black communities. On the other, the Harlem numbers racket, an illegal lottery empire that had become the economic lifeblood of Upper Manhattan during the most desperate years of the Great Depression. The 32nd Precinct covers northern Harlem, a neighborhood that by 1931 is overwhelmingly black, densely populated, and economically devastated. Unemployment in Harlem is estimated at over 40%. Evictions are constant. Hunger is widespread. Into this vacuum, the NYPD operates less as a police force and more as an occupying army. Officers are almost exclusively white. Many do not live in the neighborhoods they patrol. Many do not hide their racial hostility. Corruption is systemic. Beat cops collect weekly tribute from speakeasies and gambling dens. Sergeants take a cut and pass it up the chain. Precinct captains look the other way as long as the money flows and the violence stays manageable. For most of the 1920s, this arrangement works. The operators pay. The police protect. Everyone profits. But by 1931, the Depression has squeezed everyone. The city's budget is in crisis. Police salaries are stagnant. The flow of graft from speakeasies is drying up as customers disappear. Officers begin demanding more from the numbers operators, the only illicit business in Harlem still thriving. The demands escalate. Weekly payments become twice weekly. Flat fees become percentages. Officers start shaking down individual runners, cutting out the operators entirely. The system frays. Sergeant Daniel Corcoran is a product of this system. Born in the Bronx, son of an Irish immigrant father who worked on the docks, Corcoran joined the force in 1914. He is not particularly ambitious. He is not interested in promotion. He wants money and the power that comes with a badge and a gun. By the late 20s, he is pulling in an estimated $200 a week in graft, more than double his official salary. He has beaten arrestees in the precinct basement. He has falsified evidence. He has shaken down shopkeepers, pimps, and bootleggers. He is untouchable because everyone above him is complicit. His decision to spit on Bumpy Johnson is not spontaneous. It is calculated. He has been squeezing Stephanie St. Clair's operation for months. She has been slow-playing him, paying just enough to avoid confrontation but not enough to satisfy. Corcoran wants more. He wants deference. He wants the operators to understand that the police, not Madam Queen, run Harlem. The spit is theater. It is a message to the entire neighborhood, and it backfires catastrophically. The numbers racket, also known as the policy game, is elegantly simple. Players bet on a 3-digit number, typically derived from published financial figures, racetrack betting totals, stock exchange volumes, or treasury balances printed in the daily newspapers. The odds of hitting the number are 1 in 1,000. The payout is 600 to 1. The house edge is massive, but the minimum bet is as low as a penny. For Harlem's working poor, it offers a daily sliver of hope in an otherwise hopeless economy. By 1931, the numbers game is generating an estimated $15,000 per day across Harlem. Annually, that is over $5 million in cash passing through an underground economy controlled by a handful of black operators. The largest of these is Stephanie St. Clair. Born in Martinique around 1897, St. Clair arrives in New York in the early 1920s. She is educated, multilingual, and ruthless. She recognizes that the numbers game is fragmented, dozens of small operators competing, undercutting one another, vulnerable to police shakedowns. She consolidates. She offers runners better percentages. She guarantees payouts. She invests in enforcers who protect her collectors from stick-up men and rival operators. Within 5 years, she controls the largest numbers operation in Harlem. She is known as Madam Queen. She wears furs. She lives in a luxury apartment with sweeping views of the city, and she does not back down. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson enters her orbit around 1930. He is young, ambitious, and fearless. Born in South Carolina, he came north as a teenager and fell into Harlem's underworld. He is a numbers runner, a collector, and eventually an enforcer. He is not yet the crime boss he will become, but the instincts are already there. He is smart, he is patient, he is willing to use violence, but only when necessary. St. Clair recognizes his potential and brings him into her inner circle. The relationship between St. Clair and the police has always been transactional. She pays, they leave her alone, but Corcoran's escalating demands threaten the entire model. If she pays what he wants, every cop in Harlem will demand the same. If she refuses, she risks raids, arrests, and the collapse of her operation. She chooses a third option, demonstration. She will show the precinct that there are limits, that the police do not own Harlem, that disrespect has consequences. The spit gives her the justification. It is public, it is humiliating, and most importantly, it is personal. In the code of the streets, such an insult cannot go unanswered. She does not need to convince her enforcers. They are already willing. She does not need to convince the community. They are already watching. She simply needs to act. What happens over the next 72 hours is not a gang war. It is not a turf battle. It is a calculated campaign of intimidation designed to send a message not just to Corcoran, but to the entire precinct. You are vulnerable. You are not invincible. And if you push too hard, we will push back. The disappearance of Corcoran, the torching of patrol cars, the beating of the desk sergeant, all are carefully calibrated acts of defiance. And they work. The numbers racket at its core is a daily lottery powered by hope, addiction, and mathematics. Understanding the economics reveals why it was worth fighting and killing for. How it works: every morning, runners fan out across Harlem, visiting apartments, barbershops, diners, and street corners. Players place bets on a three-digit number between 0000 and 999. Bets range from a penny to a few dollars. The winning number is determined by a published figure, most commonly the last three digits of the total betting handle at a racetrack, printed in the afternoon newspapers. The number is considered unmanipulable, which gives the game legitimacy in the eyes of players. If a player's number hits, the payout is 600 to 1. A nickel bet returns $30. A dollar bet returns $600, more than a month's wages for most Harlem workers in 1931. The economics. Let's break down a typical day in a mid-sized operation like one of Stephanie St. Clair's territories. Daily handle, total bets collected, $3,000 across 50 runners. Odds of any number hitting, 1 in 1,000. Expected payout on a $3,000 handle, roughly $3 in winning bets, times 600 payout ratio, equals approximately $1,800. Gross profit, $3,000 minus $1,800 equals $1,200 per day. Operating costs, runners keep 10% as commission, equals $300. Enforcers, spotters, and bankers take another $200. Graft to police before Corcoran's escalation runs about $150 per week, or roughly $21 per day. Net profit, approximately $680 per day. Scale that across a week, $4,760. Across a year, over $247,000. And that is just one territory. Stephanie St. Clair controls several. By conservative estimates, her operation clears over $500,000 per year in net profit, an astronomical sum in the depths of the Depression. But the numbers are only part of the story. The game provides employment. Runners, collectors, and spotters number in the hundreds. They earn steady income when legitimate work is almost impossible to find. The game pumps cash into Harlem's economy. Winners spend their payouts at local businesses. Operators invest in real estate, nightclubs, and political influence. The numbers racket is, in a very real sense, an economic engine that keeps the neighborhood alive. Why the police want in for corrupt officers, the numbers racket is irresistible. It is cash-based. It is daily. It is illegal, which means operators cannot go to the authorities when they are extorted. A single sergeant can extract hundreds of dollars per week from a single operator. Multiply that across dozens of operators and dozens of officers, and the graft totals rival the official city budget for the precinct. But the relationship is fragile. If the police demand too much, the operators cannot afford to stay in business. If the operators refuse to pay, the police can raid them into bankruptcy. The balance depends on restraint, and by 1931, that restraint has collapsed. Officers like Corcoran are squeezing too hard, destabilizing the entire system. Why St. Clair fights back. For Stephanie St. Clair, the economics are existential. If Corcoran gets away with his escalating demands, every cop in Harlem will follow his lead. Her margins will evaporate. She will lose control. Her empire will crumble. The spit is not just an insult. It is the opening move in a shakedown that threatens her entire operation. She fights back not out of pride, but out of survival. And she wins because she understands something the police do not. In Harlem, in 1931, the numbers game is more powerful than the badge. The official response to the 72-hour crisis is silence wrapped in denial. The captain of the 32nd Precinct issues no public statement. Sergeant Corcoran is listed as missing, then quietly as having taken an indefinite leave. The desk sergeant's beating is filed as an assault by unknown assailants, with no suspects named. The torched patrol cars are attributed to vandalism. The understaffing of the midnight shift is blamed on a flu outbreak. The NYPD's leadership downtown declines to comment. The message is clear. This did not happen, and if it did, it is already resolved. Behind the scenes, however, the department is rattled. Reinforcements are quietly sent to the precinct. Patrols are increased, though officers are instructed to avoid direct confrontations with known numbers operators. Detectives are assigned to investigate Corcoran's disappearance, but the case goes nowhere. Witnesses refuse to cooperate. Informants dry up. The usual networks of neighborhood snitches and paid tipsters go silent. The investigation stalls and is eventually shelved. There is no appetite for escalation. A full-scale crackdown on the numbers racket would require resources the city does not have and political will the department lacks. More importantly, it would provoke a confrontation that might spiral into open violence. The police have lost the element of fear. The community has seen officers humiliated, vehicles destroyed, a sergeant vanished. Pushing harder risks further embarrassment. So the department does what institutions do when faced with an unwinnable fight. They de-escalate quietly, save face publicly, and adjust their behavior privately. Graft demands ease. Shakedowns become more polite. Officers avoid direct confrontations with St. Clair's people. The unspoken agreement is restored, though the balance of power has shifted. Community response. For Harlem's residents, the 72 hours are a revelation. The police, long seen as an occupying force with unchecked power, have been made to back down. The reaction is complex. There is satisfaction, even celebration in some quarters. Corcoran was widely hated. His disappearance is not mourned. The beating the desk sergeant, the torching of patrol cars, the spectacle of cops too scared to show up for their shifts, all of it is discussed in barbershops, on stoops, in church basements. For a community accustomed to powerlessness, the sight of the powerful brought low is intoxicating. But there is also fear. The numbers racket, for all its economic benefits, is still criminal. Stephanie St. Clair is still a gangster. Bumpy Johnson is still an enforcer capable of violence. Many residents understand that the same organization that stood up to the police could just as easily turn its violence inward. Debts must still be paid. Disputes are still settled with fists or worse. Protection is not always voluntary. The community is economically dependent on the numbers, but morally conflicted about the cost. Religious leaders, particularly clergy at the Abyssinian Baptist Church and other prominent congregations, walk a careful line. They condemn the violence in sermons, but stop short of naming names. They preach patience and lawfulness, but they do not call for cooperation with the police. They know their congregants play the numbers. They know the game feeds families. And they know that in Harlem, in 1931, there are no good options, only choices between bad and worse. Scenario 1. Retreat the precinct and the department leadership downtown. Choose the path of least resistance. They quietly abandon efforts to locate Sergeant Corcoran. His disappearance is officially listed as a missing person case, then an administrative closing when no body is found. The desk sergeant's beating is never solved. The patrol car arsons are written off as unsolved vandalism. Graft payments from the numbers operator's resume, but at pre-escalation levels. Officers are instructed to avoid confrontation with St. Clair's operation unless directly threatened. This scenario preserves the appearance of order, minimizes public embarrassment, and allows the department to focus resources elsewhere. The cost, loss of face, emboldened criminals, and a neighborhood that knows the police will blink first. This scenario is the most likely, and by all accounts, it is what happened. Scenario 2. Negotiated settlement behind closed doors, intermediaries broker a deal. Stephanie St. Clair, through her lawyers or political connections, agrees to resume regular payments to the precinct in exchange for a guarantee of non-interference in her operations. The payments are formalized, predictable, and sufficient to satisfy mid-level corruption without threatening her margins. Corcoran is never mentioned again. The desk sergeant is transferred. The message to other officers is clear: stay within the agreed limits. This scenario requires both sides to trust that the other will honor the agreement. It offers stability, but depends on continued corruption. The cost: legitimizing graft, entrenching organized crime, and ensuring the cycle continues. This scenario is plausible, though less likely than retreat because it requires explicit acknowledgement of crimes neither side wants documented. Scenario 3. All-out escalation. The NYPD, stung by humiliation, launches a full-scale assault on the numbers racket. Raids sweep across Harlem. Dozens of runners and operators are arrested. St. Clair is targeted for prosecution. Bumpy Johnson goes into hiding or is arrested. Federal authorities are brought in to investigate organized crime and police corruption simultaneously. Violence escalates. Informants are beaten or killed. The community turns hostile. Businesses shutter. The economic engine of Harlem grinds to a halt. This scenario is the most dramatic and the least likely. It requires political will, resources the city lacks, and a willingness to expose the department's own corruption. The cost: open warfare, economic collapse, mass arrests, and a neighborhood pushed to the breaking point. By 1931, no one police, politicians, or gangsters wants this outcome. Within the last hours, a new detail has emerged that reframes the entire 72-hour crisis. According to documents recently uncovered by researchers examining NYPD records from the early 1930s, a confidential memo was circulated among precinct captains in late September 1931. The memo, marked internal use only, advised commanders to exercise discretion in enforcement actions involving policy operations in Upper Manhattan neighborhoods. It did not mention Sergeant Corcoran by name. It did not reference the events of that week, but the timing is unmistakable. Dated October 1st, just days after the precinct went silent, the memo represents a formal, if unspoken, acknowledgement that the department was backing down. More striking, the memo instructs captains to prioritize officer safety and avoid unnecessary confrontations that might escalate community tensions. In the coded language of police bureaucracy, this is a surrender. It is an admission that the department cannot win a direct fight with Harlem's underworld, and that attempting to do so would be too costly in lives, resources, and political capital. The memo also hints at another factor: pressure from Tammany Hall, the Democratic political machine that controlled New York City politics. Tammany had long-standing ties to organized crime and profited indirectly from the numbers racket through kickbacks and campaign contributions. A full-scale crackdown would disrupt those relationships. The memo, then, is not just a tactical retreat by the NYPD. It is a strategic decision by the city's political elite to preserve the status quo, even if that means allowing a gangster to humiliate. The police. This late-breaking update confirms what many suspected: the fix was always in. By Monday morning, October 5th, the precinct returns to something resembling normal operations. Officers report for duty. Patrols resume. The neighborhood quiets. But nothing is the same. The 72 hours have redrawn the map of power in Harlem. Stephanie St. Clair's operation continues, stronger and more entrenched than before. Bumpy Johnson's reputation as an enforcer who cannot be intimidated is cemented. Sergeant Corcoran is never found. Rumors persist for decades. Some say he was killed and dumped in the Harlem River, others that he was paid to disappear, still others that he fled the city in fear. His fate remains one of Harlem's enduring mysteries. The broader implications unfold over the next decade. The numbers racket continues to thrive until the late 1930s, when Italian mobsters, backed by greater resources and political connections, begin muscling in. Stephanie St. Clair will eventually partner with and then be overshadowed by those same mobsters. Bumpy Johnson will rise to become one of Harlem's most powerful crime bosses, his legend built in part on the events of September 1931. And the NYPD will continue its uneasy, corrupt relationship with the neighborhood, learning the hard lesson that power in Harlem is not simply taken, it is negotiated. But in that moment, in the autumn of 1931, as the precinct's lights burn late into the night and the streets of Harlem buzz with whispered stories, the city holds its breath. The spit was an insult. The 72 hours were a response. And by the time the sun rises on that October morning, everyone from beat cops to political bosses understands, in Harlem, respect is not given. It is earned or taken.